When did I come out here? About 8:30 this morning? 9 o'clock, somewhere in there. It was a 15-minute video 3 hours ago. Still barely 65% uploaded because the internet here is horrible. Have I said that before? I feel like I keep repeating myself because, you know, reality. Alright, so just going for my morning walk. I don't know why, but the backpack doesn't feel so heavy today. It's got the exact same stuff in it. I took it off yesterday, dropped it on the floor, picked it up this morning, and put it on. So, unless somebody else got in and out of it. But, yeah, maybe I just made the mistake of getting stronger. The problem is, and anybody who's played a video game will teach or tell you this, the stronger you get, the more experience you get, the harder everything gets. So, and anybody who has ever faced hardship can tell you, you can get through it. We can all get through it. It's just a matter of willpower. Some people don't have the will to do it. They find excuses why they can't. They fight, they argue, they rage, they do everything except tackle their issues. Sometimes they just ignore them. I've been known to do that. Oops. So, there's my bag. Can't wear it while going through the fence, but can't really see how big it is, but there's my foot for comparison. It's a nice day out, not as warm as yesterday. Not as much sun either. I mean, if you look to the east, you got cloud cover. Look to the west, there's clouds. I guess that would be northwest, but you get the idea. Wish I could say I had something to talk about. I don't. I just really started looking at the news and stuff probably about 15 minutes ago. And I kept telling myself, I'll just read this one article and then I'll go for a walk. All right, well, let me read this other article and I'll go for a walk. All right, it's still not too late. Let me read this other article and before I go for a walk. Next thing you know, I had to force myself to stop because, you know, reading articles can be addictive. I read one about Officer Nix, N-I-X, in Florida. He was off duty, finishing up a night shift when somebody flagged him down. It was a woman on the side of a road. Something was wrong with her 3-month-old child. And so he tried to do some basic, first aid with the child right there on the side of the road. But when he realized it wasn't doing anything, he hopped in his squad car and he bolted to the nearest hospital. So congratulations, well, not congratulations, but what do you say? Props to you, or good on you. I mean, personally, as far as I'm concerned, that's his job. Now, he was off duty, so good for him for being a caring person and stopping when I don't know if his department requires that, they stop when they're trying to be flagged down when they're off duty, or what their rules are about getting involved, but I mean, I'm glad he stopped. I'm glad he was able to get that baby some help, and the child ended up surviving, by the way. But yeah, people seem to think that, how do I say this and not sound like an ass? Okay, I have nothing against police officers in general. I have family members who are police officers or who were. I've had friends who were police officers, MPs, civilian police officers, sheriffs, even prison guards. I have nothing against with them per se, but especially in regards to police officers, every time they do something that should fall in line with their duties and responsibilities, people seem to think that they're a hero. It's like, you're not a hero for doing your job. You're a hero for going above and beyond. And stopping when somebody flags you down. Now, I didn't say, well, he was in a patrol car, or a squad car, or whatever kind of car he was in, but it was marked as a police car. So he was flagged down, and he did his job. And for that, I praise him. I wish more police officers acted like that. And many do. Many do every day. You can see them on the side of the road. They got somebody, looks like they have somebody pulled over, but they don't. They're just creating a barrier between the person changing their tire and anybody who might come along and hit them from the behind. Or, if your neighbor's a cop or whatever, you can usually call them if something's going on and you think it needs to be brought to attention. Cops are generally good people. But you always have, in any group of people, you're going to have your a-holes. And sadly, they're the ones that get all the press. So I like seeing these positive police stories. More importantly, I hope that they become examples for other officers out there to say, hey, this is how we should act. We don't have to be jerks. We can respect the people and help the people around us regardless of, color, socioeconomic standards, neighborhood, etc. I mean, when was the last time you heard of firefighters who refused to go put out a fire or respond to a 911 call because it was in the wrong neighborhood, or because the person had a Middle Eastern sounding name, or because they were black? Yeah, never. Well, I can't say never. I think I did read a story about that years ago. But to be honest with you, I might be confusing reading a story with TV. Because it sounds like something I saw in like an episode of Law and Order or something. Like the fire department refused to go to a certain neighborhood and put out a fire because they were worried about their own personal safety. But the more I think about it, the more it does sound like an episode of some crime drama. And speaking of crime dramas, especially the ones that are on, network television, they always show the police as being noble. They always show the police as being interested in justice. They always show the police digging a little deeper, finding where somebody, going out of their way to find when somebody was set up, or when a mistake was made. And to be honest with you, that's not how cops are. Cops don't do that. They arrest somebody. Suddenly it's the defense attorney's job to prove a setup, not the cops. It's the defense attorney's job to prove mistaken identity, not the cops. It's the defense attorney's job to prove the person's innocence, not the cops. But I think a lot of people who go out there and they think all these cops are white knight paladins out there doing the right thing regardless of cost to self or cost to career or cost to family. I think, all cops are like TV cops. And let's face it, they're not. You can open any newspaper any day of the week and see that. You see cops shooting people in the back. Or there was one recently where a cop pulled over a woman because he saw the passenger and thought the passenger was somebody that had a warrant out for his arrest. So he pulled him over, and the woman backed into the cop. I'm not going to lie, she did. Now, whether she did that intentionally, whether she just got nervous, whether the person in the passenger seat was fighting with her, like go, 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 and he's grabbing the shifter and putting it in gear, and it just kind of gets stuck. No matter what happened, the reality is the cop pulled out his gun and started shooting, ended up shooting a woman, mother of two, who was like 22, 23 years old, and killing her. When, again, I wasn't there, I didn't see the situation, but, last time a car was coming at me, I stepped out of the way. I didn't pull my gun and fire. So, yeah, that one's kind of a gray area because, technically the cop's life could have been in danger. Again, I don't know their circumstances, but, you saw where cops are choking people to death because they're on the street selling cigarettes. Or cops are shooting kids in parks because the kids are playing with toy guns. Cops are shooting people who are walking or running away from them, citing that they felt threatened. Well, I was in the military. When somebody is running away from you, when somebody is not engaging or retreating, you do not engage. You do not fire. Unless you're, American law enforcement, in which case, you're given the benefit of the doubt by the courts and especially by conservatives. They can go entire careers and not close an important case. Nobody bats an eyelash, calls them bad police, calls the department defunct, or places blame. But you shoot somebody who is not a threat to you, everybody rushes to their defense. Yeah, and it's sad. It is. Because teachers, in my opinion, are the most important occupation in society. Any culture, it's your teachers. It's the ones who impart knowledge. It's the ones who educate you, who teach you how to think, who give you the skills to move ahead. Those are the most important occupation in society. But police officers are up there as well. And it's, sorry, going uphill. And I'm moving a little faster today just to see if I can. But police officers, they get a benefit of the doubt that teachers don't get. Teachers come into the classroom and they say something parents don't like. Teachers can lose their jobs. They can lose their tenure. They can lose their reputation. They can be, maligned online. And that becomes immortal. You don't get to take it back. And everybody says, there's a 50-50 camp. People that say, hey, that needed to be said Doesn't matter if the teacher or the parents dislike it. And other people that say, no, it's not the teacher's job to teach things the parents don't agree with. Well, pro tip, it's exactly what the teacher's job is. Because parents aren't always right. But 22-year-old teacher sleeps with an 18-year-old student, and he or she will lose their job over it, possibly their career. Again, reputation. Again, possibly even get arrested and go to jail for it. 25-year-old cop sleeps with, 18-year-old suspect. Maybe he gets a note in his file. Maybe he gets a browbeat or a reassignment. Nobody bats an eyelash. So, yeah, we put a lot of trust in teachers. Half the time a teacher gets in trouble, it's because it's under the guise of they broke the public trust. They did something against the public trust. They violated the trust of that student-teacher relationship or that teacher-society relationship. And it just seems that teachers, and let's face it, teachers aren't armed. If a student gets up and walks out of a classroom, a teacher can't run and tackle them. If a student mouths off to a teacher's not allowed to tase them or detain them. I mean, they can, but the student always has the option not to show up. It may result in a larger punishment later. See me after class. Student doesn't show up, fine. Now you got suspension. Student doesn't show up. Now you got expulsion. There are consequences, but the consequences are layered or stepped. And, where, like I said, we've seen, cops who happily engage and kill a teenager, but then when a school is being shot up, they won't go in because suddenly it's unsafe. It's like, that's your job, dude. Your job, much like a soldier's job, is to put yourself between harm and civilians. That is your job. Your job is not to observe and report. That's for a mall cop. That's for a security guard. That is not for, a trained police officer who is wearing a gun, possibly a taser, possibly some kind of baton or nightstick, possibly, or more than likely, some sort of body armor, and has training. So yeah, when you give somebody a gun, and you give somebody that kind of leeway and to decide who they're going to engage, who they're not, because every time a police officer engages you or engages anybody, it's a legal issue. Did they have the right to? Did they have probable cause or reasonable suspicion? That's why that stop and frisk policy was kicked out of New York City, because you can't just go up to people willy-nilly and demand something. That's not the country we live in, and it's not the one that we should be advocating for. I don't care who it is. If you have suspicion, then stop them. But you have to have suspicion, because every time you detain somebody, it's a legal issue. Did you have the right to detain them? You could be putting yourself, and more than likely the department, in a financial situation because you were abusing your power. Now, nobody else in society other than law enforcement does society say, here's a gun, here's a badge, and then give you the kind of leeway that we give you. Security guards don't get that, even the armed ones. Bounty hunters, even the armed ones. Private investigators, even the armed ones. Teachers, even the armed ones. The military. Nobody else in society is given that much responsibility, and then given so much little oversight and or so much protection. Looks like Champ's out there. There he is. I was gonna say, he hasn't figured out that I'm over here yet. He was barking in the other direction. What's up, buddy? Yes, it's me again. I know. See, and I would go over and pet him, but I don't know if you can see him on camera. He's very skittish, very standoffish. It's not like he's interested. Usually if a dog is friendly or interested, they'll actually come up to you. They'll take a few steps closer or whatever. You have to watch their bodies. But his hackles are raised. The fur on his spine is raised. The fur on his butt is raised. Those are all things that say, I'm scared. I'm trying to project a bigger image of myself so that you think twice about addressing me. I mean, we do it the same thing. We do, because we're human beings, we're monkeys. We do the exact same thing. We think we're going to get into a fight, especially us guys. First thing we do is we stand up a little straighter. Second thing we do is maybe put our chest out a little bit. And then maybe we look the other guy into the eye, like a dare, like a challenge. And that's what we do. It's human nature, just like what dogs do is dog nature. And that's why I can look at him and say, yeah, I'm not going to go across the electrical fence and try to pet him. And I don't want to call him too close to me because I don't know where their fence line is, the electrical fence line. And I don't want him to shock himself just trying to get close enough that, he can sniff my hand or my leg or whatever. It's not fair to him to put him in that situation. But yeah, getting back on my other subject, I firmly believe most cops are good people, or at least they try to be. Like any career people get into, you get into it for a reason, and I believe most of them are very focused on the rule of law and or want to help people. They believe that that's how they give back to society or contribute to society, is by being a cop. And like I said, most of them are nice people. Sure, when they pull you over or stop you, they take a tone, because it's right back there what I was talking about with Champ, is they take what is perceived as a command tone or an in charge tone. Now, having been in the military and having used that tone myself, there's a very good chance I'm going to ignore it. But I know exactly what it is, and I know exactly what they're doing. And as long as my interaction with the police officer is firm but fair, because I understand, they're in danger all the time. People target cops. They're always walking up on people when people don't want them to, so they may get shot, or they may get punched, or whatever the case may be. I understand it. There are certain aspects of society that don't like police. I get it. Sadly, it doesn't matter what you do, there's always going to be a portion of society that doesn't like police, because either A, they see them as tattletales, they see them as unwanted authority, or they see them as representatives of an oppressive state. And I'm sure there's many more reasons, but those are the ones that I usually read about. So, yeah, sure, police officers, they're at risk all the time, but so are all of us. if there's anything the movie theater shooting taught us, is going to a movie theater puts you at risk. Being a child in a school these days puts you at risk. Going to an outdoor concert puts you at risk. Every single one of us is at risk every day. Unless even then you're at a risk. I was going to say, unless you live out on your own 100 acres and you don't talk to anybody. Well, guess what? Even then there's risk. You're just reducing the risk. Because even then, somebody can drive up your driveway, knock on your door, and shoot you when they answer the door. Or, beat you or tie you up or do whatever. Just because you remove yourself from society doesn't mean the risk isn't there. It just lowers the risk. Because, any hunter or any fisherman's going to tell you, why would you go somewhere where there's no fish, or your chances of catching are slim? You go somewhere where they are. You go to that lake has good biting. You don't go to that lake that has one or two fish in it. You go hunting, you go where the prey is. You go where the deer are, or the elk, or whatever you're hunting. You don't go where they're not. So it's the same thing with criminals. You go where your targets are. You go where your what's the word for somebody who's been criminaled against? I don't know. For some reason I can't think of it. We're going to use target. You go where your targets are. So yeah. But yeah, like I was saying, as long as the police officer is firm but fair, I understand they have to guard against themselves, but they also have to be public servants, which means that they should be fair, law-abiding, and respectful up until, that respect is lost. So, for example, most of us encounter the police through traffic stops. That's most of us. As long as the officer comes up and says, hey, I pulled you over for this, let me see your license and registration, da-da-da. And as long as he's professional and respectful, I don't care. I'll fight the ticket in court. I'm not going to sit there and argue with him or her. But, we've all been, well, not all of us, but a lot of us have been pulled over by, Bubba the jackass. The one who wants to talk to you about why he pulled you over. Do you know why I pulled you over? I have no idea why you pulled me over. Here's my license and registration and proof of insurance. I pulled you over for this. Again, I said I didn't care. Just write me the ticket or let me go. Right now you're wasting my time. And there's nothing against that. They can't do anything for that. They can, but they have to be held accountable. So you got to be willing to deal with it. Got to be willing for them to say, well, I'm going to arrest you. For what? For going 15 over the speed limit? That's not an arrestable offense. You're not going to find any drugs or any contraband on me unless you plant it. So, again, how are you going to arrest me? Or, the one that just wants to tell you, he's just yell at you. In my experience, most cops have been professional and respectful, and every single time I tell them, hey, I disagree with why you stopped me, gave me a ticket, whatever, but I do appreciate your professionalism. I can respect that. It's just like training a dog. It's positive reinforcement. Hey, this got me a good word, or at least a positive word, versus, this other behavior got me screamed and yelled to IA and calls to my boss and calls to, everybody else under the sun. Pro tip, I always take up as much of the officer, if it's pulled over for like a traffic violation or something, I always take up as much of their time as I can. And then usually it'll come to a point where they say something like, why are you going so slow? blah, 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 you need to hurry up, blah, blah, blah. And I just look them straight in the eyes and I say, look, the longer I'm out here annoying you or keeping you, the less time you're out there giving somebody else a ticket. And I say that to them in court too, because you always fight the ticket, always. Depends on your local jurisdiction. There's a chance the cop won't show up. I think in Denver, they actually have a rule that if you have a court date, you are not allowed to miss it. But that takes the cop off the street for a few hours, or for a day, depending on your court date. And I've unfortunately been to a couple of speeding tickets, or in one case a parking ticket, and I kept the cop there for 2 hours. And I just asked him a bunch of questions. And then when the DA or the assistant DA finally said, hey, what are you doing? I just turn around and I say, I'm wasting time. You wasted my time by giving me a ticket and bringing me here. Now I'm wasting your time. And for every minute that you're here dealing with this is another minute that you're not out there harassing somebody else. There's nothing they can do. Worst thing they can do is give you the maximum fine for the ticket. Worst thing they can do. They can't suddenly hold you in contempt, because it's not contempt. As long as you keep the subject at hand, it's not contempt. So you just start asking them a bunch of questions. Ask about their car. Ask about how long they've had that vehicle. When was the last time it was maintained? When was the last time it was serviced? When was the last time the oil was changed? Just ask all these questions. It doesn't matter. And then you go and you start asking, when was the last time you went to traffic school training? When was the last time you did this? When was the last time you did that? Blah, blah, blah. Just ask questions. As long as they're relevant, you can ask all the questions you want. And then, ask about the radar gun, or ask about their experience, or ask about whatever. How did they pull you over? Why did they think you were speeding? Just keep asking questions. Ask them, ask them, ask them. Eventually, somebody's going to get frustrated. It might be the judge, and the judge might say, hey, why are you asking so many questions? And just tell them. Say, Your Honor, this whole affair from being pulled over to right now has been a giant waste of my time. So I figured I would waste the court's time, because you have to sit here and get paid, or you have to sit here, and as long as you're sitting here, you're getting paid. Same with the court clerk, same with the bailiff, same with this officer, same with this DA. Everybody here is getting paid. Now, the worst case scenario, the ticket I'm going to have to pay is going to be $150, $200. Now, we take your salary for 2 hours, his salary for 2 hours, her salary for 2 hours, his salary for 2 hours, plus the loss of efficiency for the docket for the day, and I think I come out the winner here. They absolutely hate it, but there's nothing they can do. So that's the trick, is you got to know the rules. You got to know what the rules are and how you can use them to your effect. Lawyers know this. Lawyers learn this. I've never been to law school, so I don't know if they learn it in school, if they learn those kind of strategies in school, or if they learn them, through trial and error or through mentorship or whatever. But yeah, I had a friend of mine hired a lawyer to fight a DUI, and sadly, I don't want to say sadly, but apparently it was a strategy that worked for her in the past. But what she did is she's like, we're just going to keep asking for continuances. We're going to ask for so many until this this simple little DUI case, first and only DUI you've ever had in your life, until they come back and finally say, hey, I just need to get this off the books. Let's mark it down to obstructed windshield or community service or something. And there was, and that's all they're doing. They're just wearing the court down. It's a strategy, and sure, it wreaks havoc with, the court and with the DAs and everybody, but, when you're in there, when when you're the one the government's coming after, sometimes you got to be the one to hold the government accountable, even in any other way they can, and that is to waste their time. Nothing wrong with it. The Constitution protects you. You have a right to a speedy trial, not the government. You have a right to be seen and heard, not the government. So I don't know how well this would work. I'm not going to go out there and get a speeding ticket or anything just to try it, but I'm willing to bet that if you had to go to court for a speeding ticket or something, and they said, okay, well, let's set the court date, and you say, Your Honor, I'm ready now. I have all my evidence and everything now. I'm wondering. I wonder how often the judge would say, well, blah blah blah. Because the right to a speedy trial, those protections are for you, the citizen, not for the courts, not for the cities, not for the cops. They're for you. So, or they're for us, I should say. And just like I said, you have to know what the rules are, because I wrote an article a couple years ago, a motorcycle article about the roles of the leaders and sweepers on a ride. Every ride has a leader, the first guy in the group, the one who sets the pace, the one who sets the course, the one who decides rest stops or leg stretching stops or whatever. Every rider has, or every group has at least one of those. Now sweeps, on the other hand, in a lot of situations, people think the sweep should be the slowest rider. And my argument is no. Sweep doesn't need to be the slowest rider. Sweep needs to be the most capable rider. Doesn't have to be the fastest, but the most capable. Because the sweep has to keep an eye on everybody in front of them, whether there's 3 people or 30 people. The sweep has to be able to identify when somebody's doing something unsafe. The sweep has to be able to identify when somebody's having a mechanical issue. Or if somebody goes down, the sweep needs to know accident scene management. The sweep needs to know, be able to call the police or the ambulance or something if anything happens. And most importantly, and I put this in my article, was the sweep needs to have all their their documentation ready, because chances are, if a cop comes up and flashes his lights at your group, he is going to, or she is going to turn around and follow your group and light up your group. Now, the sweep's job, in many occasions, is to get pulled over. That is their role. So and this is what I mean by following the rules. The police can generally only pull over one vehicle at a time. They cannot pull over a group. They can try to tell you, everybody over, or they can ask the sweep, where's your group going? How many people are in your group, whatever they want to do. But you don't have to answer. You don't have to answer any of that. They can usually only pull over one vehicle. Now, they're either going to pull over the sweep because he's the last person in the group, in which case that sweep goes to court and has to prove, and the cop has to prove that that was the person that they, out of the entire group, that was the person they radar detected or saw doing something or whatever. In which case, oh, there's a deer. In which case you have your, right over there. In which case you have your buddies show up to court with you, your riding buddies. And each and every one of you show up and you say, no, he wasn't speeding. Or she wasn't speeding. Or no, he wasn't the person acting like a fool. Blah, blah, blah. Now you got 10 opinions or 10 accounts versus 1. And you have reasonable doubt. Or the cop has to break into, if the cop sees somebody in the middle that they need to pull over, the cop can, pull up next to the group and then pull over, split the group and break out that one rider that they want to pull over, in which case everybody else still go forward. I'm going to tell you a story. It didn't happen to me, but it happened to a buddy of mine. A couple years ago, he was on a ride. I think he said there were, I don't know, 4 or 5 of them. It wasn't that many. And they were just doing a ride that I've done myself, you know, dozens of times. And any weekend any Colorado weekend in the summertime, you're going to find bikes out on this particular path doing their thing. You know, you can just accept it, like you can accept the sun rises in the east. Well, cop lights up the group. One guy stops and gets pulled over. The rest of the group stops, maybe from here to this shed away. No biggie. You know, they're just stopping and they're waiting. Well, the cop wrote the ticket for the one guy, and then he got in his car before the other biker could catch up to his friends and they could keep going. Got in his car, rode up to the other group, and just wrote everybody a ticket. Said, essentially, I don't know which one of you was actually speeding, but here's a ticket for all of you. You guys can figure it out. And that comes right back to it. That cop was wasting those guys' time. He was saying, hey, I can't enforce this because I really don't know which one of you my radar detector picked up. So I'm going to make you all either pay a minimal fee, or you're all going to have to take a day off of work and take your time and come to court and prove your case. And you may have to do that on multiple occasions if you all get different court dates. So he's doing the exact same thing. He's saying, hey, I can't be sure of this, so I'm just going to waste your time. Or a couple years ago, friends of mine live on a cul-de-sac, and they like to have their house parties. They have a couple a year. Maybe it's a Halloween party, maybe it's a 4th of July party, birthday party, Memorial Day barbecue, whatever. They like to have their parties. And I used to go quite often because they were close and had a lot of pretty girls as friends. You know, and that never hurts when you're inviting me to a party. Pro tip. But he, you know, like I said, they lived on a cul-de-sac. Now, there's not a lot of parking on a cul-de-sac, especially street side. So an acquaintance of mine parked in front of their neighbor's house. He didn't block their driveway. He just parked in front of their house. Well, that neighbor happened to be a cop. Problem was, that neighbor was a cop 2 counties over. He was an Adams County cop, and this party is taking place in Douglas County. So you have Arapahoe, Denver, then Adams County. But he came out, and the cop came out and wrote tickets, parking tickets up and down the line. Anybody who was parked on the cul-de-sac, he just wrote tickets to. Now, he was out of his jurisdiction. He was not on duty. And nobody was actually blocking his driveway. But I talked to most of those people over the course of the next few weeks. And I'm like, did you fight it? Did you take it to court? Did you tell the court that, why am I in Adams County court when this parking incident took place in Douglas County? And most of them said, no, I just sent in the $35 or I just sent in the $45. And I'm like, why? Why wouldn't you fight it? You just gave this cop carte blanche to be a jerk, to write tickets that he was not allowed to write, because he was upset that you were parked in front of his house. You don't get to go out and write tickets for that, just like you don't get to go out and take a sledgehammer and break people's windshields in for that. Oh no, it's just easier. And that's what they're counting on. They always count on you being lazy. You finding that, it's not worth your time or effort to fight it, which is why I have a personal philosophy that when I go to court, and I always go to court, sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but I always waste their time because they are wasting yours. Always. And for every minute, that cop is in that court, that cop is not out on the street catching somebody else. So, anywho, wasn't really what I wanted to talk about. I don't know why I got on that subject, but I don't have a problem with cops in general. Most of them are very nice people. I have a problem with bad ones, which I think all of us should. Sadly, some people don't. They're willing to defend the bad ones as much as they're willing to defend the good ones. And some people see that blue can do no wrong when evidence and history and today's newspaper proves otherwise. All right, well, that's all I got. This should take about 12 hours to upload.